Page 80. Those who do so nevertheless, however, camouflage themselves only with a dubious mask of the hiding, because they do not want to denounce and undermine their "oh so materialistic worldview" and their "flawless and gloriously exact science." But they may also take into cognizance that their doings correspond to more than just a primitive foolishness, and that it is only a tiny small step from the lie to the self-deception. This on the part of the worldly deniers of the truth, to whom, however, the religious side yet extends its hand as a second minus factor. Insofar as denials of the truth from religious circles appear in these things, they are created by unrealistic thinking human beings, who either value the letters of the scriptures higher than the creational truth, or they do this out of greed for profit reasons, or out of an unreal fanaticism. All types, however, speak against any spiritual content, and therefore they are all reprehensible and deadly. No time has passed on your earth in which the activities of the human, as well as their consciousness-based life and the spiritual life, had not given rise to fundamental, essential questions. Through religious and political irrational teachings, however, the sublime knowledge of the creational spiritual good in the human being has been lost, at least externally. Within the innermost, the human being is on the search for the truth, but for him or her, the way to it is obstructed by religious insanity and by religious means of might. The sense of the creational fairness pushes, namely, for the truth, even then when the knowledge of something is fully destroyed. Therefore, in all time periods there lived earth human beings who were able to analyze their conscience and pay to the profound truth its tribute. Thus they were able to draw from the inner knowledge and to announce words of the truth. However, since it was only very seldom part of their capabilities to become effective in the general public, they thus mostly worked in the silence and spread their wisdom teachings only in small circles. And just as in all past times, it is still the same today, at the present time. This is another and further law of the creation, and easily recognizable in the open nature. Everything great and sublime develops and prospers in seclusion and in tranquility, far from any large-scale noise and evil influences. Truth proclaimers followed these laws and recommendations and naturally worked in silence and often in secret. Often they gathered disciples around them and trained them into teachers, whose worldly attitudes, however, they were not able to bring under control. Thus it always happened, as it inevitably had to happen. The disciples wandered over the earth, and, in the absence of an amendment in their worldly attitudes, spread the teaching given to them crassly changed for their own benefit. The goods of consciousness and of knowledge, as well as the spiritual goods and the spiritual teaching, taught to them, were used by them for their own profit, were spread in twisted and falsified reproductions, and thus created irrational teachings of the worst kind, from which the step to the religious insanity and the consciousness enslavement became very small. The same thing also happened around 2,000 years ago, but also the last time when we came into contact with an earthly life form 75 years ago, and transmitted our teachings to this person. The human life form of that time, from 2,000 years ago, a man named Emmanuel, acted according to the laws and recommendations of the creation, and he followed them in brazen regulation. In only small circles, he proclaimed the spiritual teaching with his disciples were to carry forth in the same form into all the winds of the earth, in order to announce it amongst the human beings, and to show them the way back to the creation. But they emerged with false understanding of the teaching, and proclaimed irrational teachings, and confusing things. With serious consequences, these ran rampant, and settled themselves oppressively and destructively on the earthly humankind, through which a new religious might arose, which drove the human beings with giant steps into the abyss of the ruin. This should not happen once again, because this time our transmissions are to be recorded in good and legible writing, to the letter, and are to be spread truthfully for all times. Not an iota of a letter should be changed, because only so will the entirety remain preserved in an unfalsified manner for all times. An evil enslaving cult should not emerge from it once again, because only the truth of the creation, its laws and recommendations, and its brazen regulation resulting from them, embody the sense of the truth in the spirit. Already for a long time, it is no secret to the earth human being anymore, that precisely in the present time, at the time of the dissolutions and transformations, human beings are at work in very large numbers to stir up and to newly spread the religious irrational beliefs in unprecedented masses. For this, all means are appropriate to them, and they even do not shy away from innocently shed human blood. Through irrationally created anxieties, they press their fellow human beings into straitjackets of religions and evil sects and deprive them of their consciousness freedom. Irrational speeches and assertions of an end of the world and of godly judgments bubble fanatically over the lips and bring to their fellow human beings enslavement, death, and ruin in new forms. These are signs of the time, for every new transition from a cosmic age into a new one awakens evil delusions and foolishness in irrationally thinking life forms. The earth human beings, however, have fallen prey to the deadly delusions of religions, and so their delusions and foolishness are pressed into Ausartungen of the worst religious insanity. Conditioned by evolution and time, however, the first truth proclaimers also appear on the scene in the present time, even if they are only very small in number and can be counted on half a hand. The new age, however, demands their existence as a necessity, because they not only diligently cultivate the true spiritual knowledge and their wisdom, but also spread them with awareness of their obligation true to creational laws and recommendations. They feel the obligation within themselves to pass on their knowledge and their wisdom, and to sow amongst the humankind like the sower who sprinkles his or her seeds into the earth. With this allegory of the sower, the question is also raised: what driving powers are founded in the truth proclaimers and prophets? Those powers which must also become inherent in the normal human being, who still must be taught in a spiritual and consciousness-based manner. This is the reason why they gain a higher view of life, in which the vason of the spirit and the consciousness stand very much higher than the material body. The cognition of this shows that the material body only represents a tool and a dwelling for the activity and being of the spirit on earth. With this cognition, the human being, as a spirit vason, steps out of the time and space existence of the earthly life and lives as being in the eternal times of the endless duration. If the earth human being looks at and considers this bearing towards consciousness and spirit more closely for a start, then he or she recognizes the exact opposite of the attitude towards the view of life which is evinced by the humankind of today, because it indeed lives according to its own laws and recommendations of worldly impression, and only in the sense of maintaining their body for as long as possible, fattening it through drinking and excessive eating until deformity, and allowing it all possible and impossible lusts and desires. And this same earth humankind lives, at the same time, only to acquire material riches which are bounded by time and sooner or later will be eaten by moths and rust. The reality of their lives only comes down to giving free rein to all their lusts and desires and passions, and bringing forth fulfillment to these. Therefore, woe to them if they continue to mock the truth of the creation. In the future, a new battle plan of a new time will rule the earth and its humankind. The cosmic change and the existence of the age of Aquarius demand their right according to their guidelines, to which the earth human being must bow, whether they want to or not, because the continued existence and the self-relative absolute fulfillment of the creation itself demand the respect and fulfillment of its laws and recommendations. So the Earth human being has the choice between life or death. Their rallying cry of battle will fade away unheard in the endless expanse of the universe if the humankind of the Earth turns against the reformation of the new time. But already the struggle for a new and human-worthy mode of life on the Earth has begun, even if this has not yet been recognized. Two life forms, in knowledge, truth, wisdom, and love, have taken up the fight against the quote, unspirit, and have shot their first striking and painful arrows. And they teach, just as the true truth proclaimers before them, the human beings in the spiritual teaching with harsh and burning words. They proclaim their wisdom in small and nameless circles, as it is known to them from the laws of nature. But they will make their waves, only very small at first, in order to then slowly grow into raging waves which roll over the centuries and sweep everything away. Two of these truth proclaimers have already stepped into the fight against millions and countless millions of human earthly life forms who walk the broad way of the damnation and have fallen prey to the juggernaut of materialism and religion. They are still only two human life forms, these new time truth proclaimers, and still the earth human being laughs at them unknowingly and pitifully. Note: the first, Anatole, has, together with the second, Mariam Petra, died in a car accident in the year 1981 in Germany. But the power and truth of the new time reformers will prevail, for they will find convinced supporters, and the number of those searching for and researching the spiritual truth and recognition will constantly grow and become boundless. They will become a thunderous and surging wave that thunderously tears away all the banks and absorbs them in the gigantic sea of all creational powers, the truth, the knowledge, the wisdom, and the love. Those who today still laugh at the truth proclaimers, unknowingly and pitifully, and insult them as do-gooders, will be those who first want to cry out for help of the new time reformers and to make amends. But they will not escape from their well-deserved teaching, and will be those who have to fight longest for their lives in the raging waves of the truth, which absorb everything within itself. The fairness of the truth, which has been stricken with insult and defilement, is only difficult and hard to attain, and every life form pays its tribute exactly according to the measure that it has turned to the truth, and thus to the creation. So the earth human being calmly laughs at the truth proclaimers foolishly, unknowingly, and pitifully, and insults them as do-gooders and fools. The time will come, however, when the laughing human being quite suddenly realize, with painful regret, that they, in truth, should never have laughed at the truth proclaimers, but rather only at themselves, at their own foolishness, their unknowledge, and their self-pity. This is demanded by the law of the fairness.